Okay, let's talk about absolute value. Yes, I know you've talked about absolute value in the past. There's no question. Nobody in this room has made it to high school and not talked about absolute value. Absolute value is 6. Absolute value -6, also 6. Okay, but remember what an absolute value is. It's not like people will mistakenly tell you, oh, the absolute value of some number is just the positive of the number. Like, that doesn't make sense. No, stop. Okay, what an absolute value is a distance. Why not right? Well, not right in that little spot. I don't know what's going on. It's a distance from 0 on a number line. So here's 0, here's 6, here's -6. How far away from 0 is 6? It's a distance of 6. How far away from 0 is -6? 6. It's a distance of 6. Like the people who try to tell you it's always positive, yeah, that's not the case. How far is 0 from 0? It is 0 away from 0. That 0 is not a positive number. You can't just say it's going to be a positive, because if that were the case, this wouldn't be true. And it is. So let's just go through here. Absolute value -4, yep, it's 4. Absolute value 7, yep, it's 7. Absolute value 0, yep, it's 0. Now let's say you get into stuff where order of operations showing up. You put this -5 right next to that absolute value, you're definitely multiplying by it. And see how I'm going to change it from an absolute value to a parentheses? Because the parentheses just tell me to multiply. The absolute value -4 is 4. So -5 times 4 makes -20. Like, here's an example of where if you've ever heard folks go, ooh, 2 negatives make a positive, sometimes like that, you can't say that out loud. That's not true. Here's an example where 2 negatives do not make a positive answer, because it's just you do what it tells you to. Now, if you want to say if you're multiplying two negative numbers, that you'll get a positive answer, that's a true statement, but you can't just say 2 negatives make a positive. Okay, absolute values are also grouping symbols. So I'm going to group up that 3 plus 7 in there first, and 3 plus 7 is 10. And then 2's right next to this absolute value, so I'm going to multiply by it. Absolute value 10 is still 10. There's me 20. Okay, I'm going to absolute value the quantity -4 plus 7. Well, -4 plus 7 is 3. The absolute value of 3 is 3. You don't just go in there and make everything positive. 4 plus 7 is 11. This is not the answer. Okay, it's a grouping symbol. It says, oh, we'll do what's inside here first. Same thing here. It's a grouping symbol. -6 minus 2 makes -8. So we group that up and we do that calculation first. Then, because this is right up next to the absolute value, when we multiply, and the absolute value -8 is an 8. And then you multiply before you either add or subtract. So 4 times 8 is 32. And then -3 minus 32, we're going to end up with -35. Okay. All right. Then we're going to get to where we're solving equations using absolute value. So the first little part was just to make sure we understand absolute value. Here's let's think about an equation. Because remember, equations are just statements of truth. What could I take the absolute value of and get a 7? Well, definitely just 7. But there's something else. If I'd put a -7 in there, absolute value, that's also 7. So there's two different things that could have filled in that blank and made it true, either a 7 or a -7. Same thing here. What can I take the absolute value of and get 3? Well, absolute value 3 is definitely 3, but the absolute value -3, also 3. So people start thinking, oh, there's always 2. No, there's not always 2. Right here, absolute value of what is 0? There's just one number, 0. And then right here, absolute value of what is -4? Yeah, not possible. So there's nothing we can put in there. There's no solution. So basically, for the majority of the time, almost all the time, when you do absolute value equations, you're going to either get 2 solutions like we did right here. Oops. Well, you no longer have permission to access this notebook. Will sync again if permissions are restored. What is that all about? Okay, so you'll either get the 2 solutions like we did here, 1 solution, or no solution like we did here. Now, it is possible to have infinitely many solutions. It's not going to happen for hard it's hardly ever going to happen. So we're not going to really focus on it today. So here's where we are. We're trying to figure out what x is. The absolute value of some number is 10. So first thing is basically, this is where the common sense part comes in. Like we just think about it. Can an absolute value be 10? Yes. So the first thing you do is just think. Is it possible? If it's possible, keep going. If it's not possible, you stop and you put no solution. It's kind of nice. Okay. But yeah, it's possible. And then you're just trying to figure out what can go inside here. See how the x is inside those absolute values? You're just telling me what that x can be. If I did the absolute value of 10, I'd get 10. If I did the absolute value of negative 10, I'd also get 10. So the x part of that is either 10 or negative 10. Okay? All right. Now, this part's a little different. It's still thinking. You got this absolute value is 4. Now, just ignore the fact that it says x minus 1 for just a second. Think, can an absolute value be 4? Yes. What numbers could go in there? Either 4 or negative 4. So now if we look back over here, the part that's in there, I'm going to call that an argument. An argument is just some expression in math that you do another function to. So like here, x minus 1 is one thing, and I take the absolute value of it. So what I'm saying is whatever that x minus 1 is, it is either a 4 or it's a negative 4. And make sure you write the word or in between, okay? And then we'll just solve each for x. Therefore, remember the little triangle with 3 dots. That stands for therefore. So x is either 5 or negative 3. And see, check it. If you go back to the original problem, if I put a 5 right there where the x is this true? Yep. If I put a negative 3 where the x is that true? Yep. So these are really easy to check. Okay. All right. Now this one, you're saying absolute value of some number is negative 3. So remember, first thing we do is we just think, is it possible? Is the distance from 0 ever going to be negative 3? Can an absolute value equal negative 3? It cannot. That is impossible. Do not waste time doing any work. You just come over here and tell everybody there's no solution. Okay. All right, so then here, can an absolute value be 0? Yep, the only number it works, though, is if you put a 0 in there. So whatever that 4x minus 9 is 0. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. We're going to divide both sides by 4. Oop, then we're done. So there's just the one solution. Okay, all right. Now, sometimes you get this absolute value and it's not over here on a side by itself. Well, you just treat it like you would any other algebraic expression or like a variable. Like I want that thing by itself first. So what I'm going to do is get that negative 10 out of the way. I'm going to add 10 to both sides. So what we're doing is isolate the term with the absolute value. Okay, then think. Is it possible? Can an absolute value be 6? Yep. How? Is if that's either 6 or negative 6. So we're going to say whatever that argument is either 6 or it's negative 6. And then we're just going to solve for x. Right here, we're going to subtract 9 from both sides. Divide both sides by 3. That's the two things x might be. Therefore, x is either negative 1 or it's negative 5. And you want to check? Go back to the original problem. Absolute value of 3 times, well, let's say this. If you take 3 times negative 1, add 9 to it. Take the absolute value of that whole thing. Take 10 away. does it equal -4? Okay, let's see. It sure does. And if we do the same thing with the -5, yep, also works. Okay, so again, on these more complicated looking questions, isolate the term with the absolute value. So here's the term that has the absolute value in it, -15 in the way. Let's add 15 to both sides. Okay, again, isolate the term or isolate the absolute value. Well, right now that absolute value is getting multiplied by 2. How do you undo multiplying by 2? You divide by 2. Okay, once the absolute value is isolated, think. Can an absolute value be 10? Yes, if the number inside the absolute value is either 10 or -10. So say that. Whatever's inside the absolute value is either 10 or -10. Therefore, x is either 13 or it's -7. Okay? All right here. Again, isolate the absolute value. It means we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. Think, can an absolute value be 4? Yes. If whatever that argument is either 4 or -4. Solve each of these individually. Therefore, g is either 6 or it is -2. And here's the thing, I know I'm going fast. This is on a video that you're not required to watch. There's such thing as a pause button. There's a rewind button. You can rewind and pause all you want. So, yes, I will always go way faster on the video than I'm going in class. Isolate the absolute value. Divide both sides by 4. Okay, think. Can an absolute value be 0? It sure can, but only if that number inside there is 0. So that 2r plus 7's got to be 0. Let's subtract 7 from both sides. Divide both sides by 2. R's got to be -7/2. Then I think this is the last one. And your paper has a typo on it because this is the second time I'm making this video. I don't know what happened on the first time. It just disappeared and didn't work. I don't know where it went. So I had to do it again. But I fixed the typo. You have 2 equal signs, which doesn't make any sense. This one right here is supposed to be a negative. So, okay, right here, we're going to isolate the term that's got the absolute value in it, just like we do when we're solving variables or solving for variables. Now we're to here. Well, that absolute value is getting multiplied by -2. Let's divide both sides by -2. Okay, so look what you're saying. Wherever that absolute value quantity is, has to be a 4. See why? If that's a 4, it is -11. But how do I make that 4? Well, if I take the absolute value of 4, I get 4. If I take the absolute value of -4, I get 4. So that 5n minus 1 is either 4 or it's -4. Oops, supposed to be an n. Come back. Therefore, n is either 1 or it is -3/5.